Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, technology, we've got past. So today I want to talk about what is Chocolatey. So we've talked a lot about Linux package managers just now. We've even talked about Homebrew, which is for the Mac, and a lot of the other talks going through PackagingCon will always probably be between those two. There won't be so many on Windows. In fact, I don't know if there's any others. So package managers on Windows it's not something that's really familiar. So I'm hoping to give everybody a kind of background of what Chocolatey is. And Chocolatey is a package manager for Windows. So first of all, why am I qualified to talk about this? So very briefly, my name's Paul Broadwith and I'm from Glasgow in Scotland. I tend to talk fairly fast, as most Scottish people do. I've had 30 years in IT in various different areas, but I'm currently the technical engineering manager at Chocolatey Software. And two products that Chocolatey have is Box Starter and C Choco DSC Resource. And I'm the lead engineer on both of those. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. So what I want to do today is give you really a high-level overview of what Chocolatey is and understand what it is for the Windows ecosystem. Learn why it was created in the first place. What actual pain points does it solve for the end user, for the Windows user? Learn about what the Chocolatey community repository is and when you should and should not use it. That's really important because that's where the community packages are stored for Chocolatey. And we'll talk a little bit about them later on, but that's kind of fundamental to a kind of home user's use of Chocolatey. And finally, when you submit a package to Chocolatey Community Repository, you want to submit a new software version or a new bit of software you found, or a new zip file that has files in there that you want to share with the community. Understand the process that goes through when you submit it. So Chocolatey has a commercial and a free arm. Okay, everything we're going to talk about today can be used on the free version of Chocolatey, the free and open source version that you can download and use. There is one aspect I'll kind of mention a couple of times. It's about internalization. That requires a commercial license, but I'll talk about why that needs that. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm going to kind of focus on the free and open source version. But it's to let you know there's a commercial version for businesses that has like Chocolatey Central Management involved in there, that has the deployments and reporting and that kind of thing as well. But as I said, everything we're going to do today is in the free and open source version. So the world of package managers, you probably all know this, okay? You've watched a couple of talks just now, one on Macs, one on kind of Linux. You're going to watch other talks, as I said, probably a lot to do with Linux. But I want to give you a history, just looking at it from a purely Windows side of things, Windows ecosystem, a Windows user. I want to explain what these things are like for us. So when we look at PowerShell core, I'm a PowerShell person. Chocolatey loves PowerShell. So that's the package I've picked and the example I've picked. If you want to install that on Linux, depending on your flavor of Linux, you've got different options there. You can use apt-yum pacman. Just taking the example of apt install -y PowerShell. And that will download, install PowerShell core onto Linux, silent, unattended, and no interaction at all. You guys are all used to that. That's just normal. For Windows, it's not, but we'll come to that in a second. If you want to do the same thing on a Mac, it's exactly the same. It's just a command. We're using Homebrew in this case. You heard from Mike earlier on. So it's brewcast install PowerShell. And there you go. That downloads and installs PowerShell core on your Mac, silent, unattended, and with no interaction. To install PowerShell core on Windows is a completely different experience. You have to go and find the installer first of all, okay, the executable file or the MSI file. I download it, you run it, and then you'll be presented with maybe a license agreement. You'll have to click next a huge number of times. You might get the option to change the path it installs to. You might have to tick some other boxes and click finish. It's not silent, it's not unattended, and it does require a lot of interaction, which is completely different from the previous two experiences we've just seen. So why Chocolatey? Well, Chocolatey is a package manager for Windows, as I've said. It was created by Rob Reynolds back in March 2011. Now, this is a bit of a lot of people get a sort of surprise moment when they hear this. Chocolatey wasn't created yesterday, last week, or last month. It's almost 11 years old. And it's been around for a very long time in the Windows ecosystem, but a lot of people still don't know about it because they're just used to downloading, clicking, and running software to get it to installed. And then when they have to update it, they have to do the whole thing again. But we are currently at a 0.11.3 version, which was released only a couple of weeks ago. So you might look at that and think, you've been around 11 years, you've only got a 0.11.3 release, what's going on there? What we look at Chocolatey is that's a stable version to us, okay? But we know that the community look at that outside the Chocolatey community, because the Chocolatey community kind of know that that's a stable version. But outside of that, people looking at it going, that's a pre-release, that's not actually an official version. So what we're actually going to be doing soon is releasing a version 1. And it's really going to be to say, hey, this is a stable version. We know it's stable, but we want to say that to the community. This is a stable version, and we want to make sure that everybody knows that. So watch this space for that. That's going to be soon. So because we now have Chocolatey, because we now have a package manager for Windows, we can now run a command similar to what we do for Linux and Macs. We run choco instead of apt, or choco instead of brew. Choco install PowerShell-core -y, and that will install PowerShell core silent and unintended and with no interaction. Now I'm going to hopefully demo that later on if the demo gods allow me to do that, but that is a huge thing for Windows users. Now, as I said, I know I'm going to repeat myself again, but Linux and Mac users, you guys have had this for so long. It's just normal for you, but for Windows users, this is a bit of magic. This is something we've been looking for so long. This allows so much automation that Windows doesn't or didn't really have prior to Chocolatey. It required people to manually install software and keep golden images that have software and it's out of date, and you can't install it at the actual deployment time. Chocolatey allows all of that to happen. So, like any bit of software, like any package manager, it has prerequisites. Just get a drink there. Prerequisites for Chocolatey are we support Windows 8.1 and Server 2008 R2 in Azure. That's because Microsoft support them. So that's a supported kind of baseline for the Microsoft operating systems. Now, older operating systems will work. We support back to Windows PowerShell 2. So Chocolatey will actually work on Windows 7. It'll work on Windows Server 2003, believe it or not. The only prerequisites on those operating systems is that .NET 4.5, which you can see at the bottom there, which is required to interact with the community repository, doesn't actually give Windows 7 and Windows 2003 those ciphers that add in that TLS 1.2 support. So you have to go and jump through some hoops. As I've said in the second one there, older operating systems may work with some hoop jumping. So you'd maybe have to download the packages on another machine and then get them to be installed on Windows 7, Windows 2003, or you can you can download the install script from Chocolatey in a separate machine as well and give them access to it. So they will work, they will be able to install the software. They just can't interact with the community repository where all the software for the community is stored. And that's just because of those operating systems being sold and that .NET 4.5 not giving them support for that. There's nothing Chocolatey can do about that, unfortunately. So a fundamental tenet of Chocolatey, and it's a fundamental tenet really of all package managers, but I think it's really worthwhile stating here because it's incredibly important. And it's that Chocolatey manages packages and packages manage installers. Really straightforward. I always use Google Chrome as an example, mainly because everybody kind of knows about Google Chrome. Firefox, same thing. Chocolatey manages the Firefox or the Google Chrome package, but the Google Chrome or Firefox package manages the installers for that software. Chocolatey does not manage those installers directly. It manages the packages. So that's something, I try and tell everybody about package managers and Chocolatey in particular, because some people, it's a bit of a mind shift when you're coming from having to click next, and clicking some buttons to go into a fully unattended install with one command. It's just something that's difficult sometimes for people to understand. But once they get this, it all makes sense. So just to explain what a Chocolatey package is, A Chocolatey package basically builds on the NuGet package framework, but it remains compatible with version 2 repositories. What does that really mean? Well, NuGet is a package framework that things like Visual Studio use. So it's a Windows, it's not a Windows only, but it was primarily a Windows package framework that was used, as I said, for things like Visual Studio. And there's a version 2 of that, and that version 2 uses OData endpoints. Okay, so when you're querying those endpoints, you use something called OData to do that. There's a version 3 repositories, which are JSON endpoints. Chocolatey doesn't support version 3 as yet, but that's work that's being done to do and support that. But just to jump back up to the top there, Chocolatey package is effectively a special zip file with a NUPKG extension. And we're going to see that hopefully in the demo, fingers crossed. And because of that extension, we commonly call it a new package. Well, technically it is called a new package because of that file extension. I call it a nupkeg just because it makes more sense to me. But so you'll hear people call it nupkeg or new package. And it basically contains, that package contains metadata, PowerShell scripts, and sometimes other files. So we've got just an example of some of those files on the right-hand side there. So for example, that new spec file, that actually has the metadata in there. So the package ID, the package version, the description of the package, the summary, any dependencies that that package requires, because you can have package dependencies as well. So for example, a piece of software may require a version of .NET in there. Well, you wouldn't bundle that in with a package. You can actually bundle that as a dependency. Bundle's probably the wrong word. Add that as a dependency. So that you can install that before you install the software. So that's all in that new spec file. That Chocolatey install PS1 file is those PowerShell scripts. We'll actually come on to them in the next slide, but there's three of them that you can use. But the Chocolatey install is really the only one that's used by most. You might not have any PowerShell scripts, and then Chocolatey will actually just put the files onto the file system. So you could just something like files you want to put onto that another bit of software uses, for example. And finally, you can bundle in some of those MSI files, exe files into the package. We've got Google Chrome MSI there. So what can a Chocolatey package do? Well, the Chocolatey loves PowerShell. Chocolatey relies on PowerShell. Chocolatey actually includes its own PowerShell host. And those PowerShell scripts install, upgrade, and uninstall the software. And it's almost, not quite, but almost anything you could do in a PowerShell package. You can do in PowerShell, you can do with a Chocolatey package. Now, the Chocolatey community repository has some restrictions. I suppose restrictions is actually the wrong word. Has some things that we recommend maintainers don't do because it's a public repository, and we'll talk about this later on. We kind of have some standards that we recommend that maintainers don't do. So that they can not breach those standards, so that the users that use those packages are more comfortable that somebody's looked at it, and we've got a set of rules and standards that we adhere to. Those three PowerShell files on the right-hand side there, Chocolatey install, Chocolatey before modifying, Chocolatey uninstall. The install and uninstall PowerShell scripts, they're fairly straightforward. They install and uninstall the software. And Chocolatey provides helpers. We call them Chocolatey helpers in order to do that. And you provide data to the helpers, and it'll go away and download the software and install it, etc., and uninstall it in the last one's case. The Chocolatey before modify is slightly different in that it's actually run before upgrade and uninstall, and it does things like stop services and kill processes, that kind of thing, that would stop you maybe installing upgrading or uninstalling software. So we're going to have a quick look at a Chocolatey package, and I'm hoping the demo gods are kind to us. So here is, I've actually installed some software here just so that we can do this. So it's the Notepad++ Chocolatey core extension was a dependency of some of the packages that I wanted to install. So I actually installed 7-zip and Notepad++. Hopefully that's come out across and that's big enough on the screen for you. What I actually want to do is, this is the website for PowerShell Core. Since we're talking about it, that's the one I'm going to use. Sorry, this is the package page, not the website, on the community repository. So you can see that there. And I'm just going to go down here and just download the actual package itself. I downloaded it earlier, but we're going to go and have a look at it again. So that's me finished there. And then I want to go and have a look here. And I'm going to just open that and just very quickly show you. Now, unfortunately, I can't increase the screen size, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to install Zoom it. And that will just show you as well how Chocolatey works. And we're going to go and install that software and get that running. And that will allow me to zoom that screen in a little bit and make it bigger for you. So we've downloaded that. And while doing that, I'm going to grab a drink. So there's Chocolatey run. It's updated some registry keys you can see here, and bang, there we go. That's it done. Okay, and that's Zoom it running. That's fine. So what I'm then going to do, and I hope this is going to work. There we go. And that shows you some of the, so we've got there the legal folder, we've got a tools folder, and we've got that PowerShell-core.newspec. I'm going to have a look into that. The tools folder's actually got the PowerShell scripts in there, and the legal folder's got licenses and various other things in there. So we'll have a look at those. So let's get the license and the verification.txt. I'm not going to dig into them. They're kind of straightforward. The tools, as I said, has got the PowerShell script to install. It's got another PowerShell script in there to do some more work, and an additional text file. This is the one that I was actually wanting to have a look at, if I can. There we go. Apologies that there's no syntax highlighting for that. I'm going to zoom in on that as well. And as you can see there, that's the kind of metadata I was talking about. The PowerShell-core, the ID, and the version. Okay, there's other information in there as well, but we're not going to go through all of that. So that's really what I wanted to show you for that. So that's the anatomy, if you like, of a PowerShell, of a Chocolatey package. So the Chocolatey community repository. So when you install Chocolatey CLI and you want to go and install a package, it by default will go to the Chocolatey community repository. There's an organization. If you're using this in an organization, we recommend you turn that off. But for a home user, it will actually download things by default from a Chocolatey community repository. You can set up your own repository. You can actually set up a local folder, as I do when I do demos. I've got a local folder of all the packages I need to install. So Chocolatey community repository is at community.chocolatey.org, and that was where I showed you in the last demo there. We downloaded a package from, and it's hosted and paid for by Chocolatey themselves. And Chocolatey uses it, as I said, as a default Chocolatey package source. So if you look at the package sources, you'll see one called Chocolatey. That's the community repository. And that repository is an OData and NuGet v2 feed, as I said, and the vast majority of those packages are created by volunteer maintainers. So people like you and me, I have a number of packages that I actually maintain as just a home user of Chocolatey. And there's a number of the Chocolatey team actually maintain their own packages. Some vendors maintain their own packages, and we really encourage vendors to do that. And there's becoming more and more, again, as people are learning and understanding what Chocolatey is, more and more vendors are coming along. And what they're doing is, when they're actually building the software, a lot of them are actually putting at the end, just push it to Chocolatey. And it goes through the automated processes, as I'm going to talk about. The repository is for the many and not a few. The use is monitored. The only thing that's monitored for the use is the IP address. And that's purely because what we want to do is see which IP addresses are really abusing the community repository. Chocolatey does not phone home. It never has, and it never will. It does not phone home for any information. To provide any information to Chocolatey. So all that happens is, if you download a package, you're obviously downloading it from the Chocolatey community website repository. That IP address that you've downloaded it from is recorded. That is all that's all that's done. And then we can run reports off and say, oh, that IP address there this month has downloaded 100,000 packages. That's not a home user. That's probably an organization. And we can contact that organization if we can find out what the IP address is, and have conversations about how they can use that community repository in a manner that works for everybody and not just for them. And licensing is really important as well. It doesn't, the community repository doesn't have redistribution rights. So that's why, for example, if you go and download the Google Chrome package or the PowerShell core one we've seen there, you won't find the binaries inside there, because Chocolatey community repository, being a public feed, does not have those redistribution rights. So the monthly website stats as of November 2021, and the stats on the right were taken on Sunday. The stats on the left were taken about 10 minutes ago, because I forgot I had not updated them, so I went quickly to do it while the previous speaker was on. So we can see there on the right, the Chocolatey community repository has 9,044 unique packages and 137,000 versions of those packages. And that's in total 1.6 billion downloads. Now that 1 billion downloads limit, I think we hit that wasn't that long ago. I'm not going to tell you which date it was, because I honestly can't remember. It'll be the wrong date and people complain, but it wasn't that long ago. So the traffic has exploded. We've got 2.92 billion requests in November, 226.35 terabytes a day, and 11.81 million visits. I mean, that's a huge amount that the Chocolatey community repository is serving. So again, going back to what I said at the beginning, been around for 11 years, not a flash in the pan, didn't appear yesterday. Okay. And briefly, what I'm going to show you here is the process that goes that your packages go through if you submit one. So if you push a package to Chocolatey Community Repository, let's say it's a new package that you found a bit of software, it's not in the community repository. Hey, I'm going to create a package for it. You just push that package with the API key, and that will go into the system. Now, if you're actually pushing a new version of the existing package, you have to be listed as a maintainer, or that won't work. But if we're talking about a new package here, and what happens is that gets received and it goes through 4 stages: package validator, verifier, scanner, and a human moderator. And very briefly, package validator will validate the metadata in the package. So we looked at that earlier on, where we looked at the ID and the version, but there's URLs in there as well for like license and the package source and those kind of things. They're all validated as well to make sure that they're actually real URLs and nobody's made a mistake or a typo. The package verifier, what that does is in a sandbox environment, it installs and uninstalls the packages, make sure it all works. And then once it passes that, it goes on to the package scanner, where all the files for the package, including things inside a zip file, that kind of thing, will also be uploaded. Will all be uploaded to VirusTool, which scans them against 50 to 60 AV scanners. And then once those results come back, and they're under a certain limit, because there are false positives, and through experience in 11 years of doing this, we have a limit of the number of false positives that we'll accept. It then moves on to a human moderator, and that human moderator will do a sanity check of everything, checks PowerShell code, makes sure the detections, for example, with a virus scanner are there, etc. And so once it passes that and that's approved, it goes and is able to be downloaded by anybody and installed by anybody who uses the community repository. But the packages are also verified on a monthly basis as well. So it'll show a monthly package verifier too. Now, for vendors, we can skip the human moderator. For trusted maintainers, we can skip the human moderator, because vendors are trusted with their own software, and trusted maintainers will be consistently producing high quality packages, and we therefore trust what they're doing, and we can actually skip that human moderator part. So the whole thing is therefore just automated. So I want to just show you very quickly, because we are just about out of time, is I want to install the PowerShell core that we talked about at the beginning. So there's the command we talked about. Hopefully, again, you can see that. Choco install PowerShell-core -y, and it will go off and install that. Now, you might also notice it's going to go and install some dependencies. As I said earlier on, you can have dependencies in that package. So if you can see there, the progress, downloading the KB311 and KB2919355, they're dependencies for PowerShell core. Okay, so it's off and it's installed them. They don't need to be installed in all operating systems. So that package will download and go, oh, I don't have to install here because you're using, for example, as it says there, Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise. Okay, just about there. So it says that. So yeah, I'm not installing. I've downloaded, but I'm not installing because we have the instructions in that PowerShell install file to say that. This is actually taking a little bit longer than it did earlier on. Demo gods, sorry for long. But let's give that a bit of time. And what you'll also notice as well is when it's actually going through all of that, it's saying things like approved. You see the approved at the end of the package names. You'll get little comments there. Sometimes a package is broken, and it will say possibly broken as well, because that monthly package verifier has said, wait a minute, that didn't work that time. So direct on, that's PowerShell core installed. We've got the dependencies installed as well. Chocolatey-Windows update.extension is another one. And if we then go and run there, it's sitting in the start menu. That's PowerShell core. And there we go. PS version 7.1.5, and this one is 5.1. So you can see we've actually installed a different version of the software. So just in summary, as I know we're going over time, apologies. We know what Chocolatey is. We know what the pain point it solves. It solves that automation for Windows. And we learned what the Chocolatey Community Repository is. It's the source of packages that are by default installed with Chocolatey CLI. And we followed the process when you submit a package to the Chocolatey Community Repository, that package validator, verifier, and scanner. That's all my details. I am now finished. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Hello, I am back. So I don't think we have time for questions. So thanks for the talk.
Time. Oh, awesome. Okay.
Thanks for the talk, Paul. And Well, hopefully you'll be able to answer them over on the Element room.
I'm going over there right now.
Awesome. Sounds great.